The stars had been dying for 3,000 years, not the stars themselves, but the light of civilization that burned around them. One by one, the great empires of the galaxy had fallen silent. Their cities became tombs, their ships became debris, their people became slaves, or worse. The Valkyrie Dominion had done this. They came from the dark spaces between galaxies, their crystalline ships cutting through space like knives through flesh. No one knew what they truly wanted. They did not negotiate. They did not explain. They simply consumed everything in their path. 17 civilizations had fallen to them. The proud Thessan Empire, which had ruled 10,000 worlds, lasted only 40 years against the Valkyrie advance. The ancient Mindari, whose psychic abilities let them speak across the stars, were scattered to hidden worlds in a single century. The machine intelligences of the Crucible Network, beings of pure thought and energy, were somehow destroyed completely. No one knew how. Now only fragments remained. The survivors called themselves the Galactic Compact. They hid in the spaces the Valkyrie had not yet reached. They watched. They waited. They hoped for a miracle. Ambassador Thessan of the Mindari stood on the bridge of her small diplomatic vessel and looked at the yellow star ahead. Sol, the humans called it. A young star in an unremarkable corner of the Orion Arm. Around it orbited 8 planets, and on the third one lived the newest spacefaring species in the galaxy, humanity. Thessan had studied what little information existed about them. They had achieved faster than light travel only 200 years ago. They had sent a few exploration ships to nearby systems, established a handful of small colonies, and then stopped. They had pulled back to their home system and gone quiet. The Compact had largely ignored them. What could such a young species offer? They were children playing in the shallows while monsters swam in the deep. When the Valkyrie finally noticed them, they would be swept away like all the others. But the Valkyrie had noticed them now. Their scouts had been seen in the systems near human space. Their invasion fleet was gathering. In perhaps 2 years, maybe less, humanity would face the same fate as every other species in the galaxy. Thessan's mission was simple: warn them, offer evacuation to the refugee worlds, save as many as possible. It was the least the Compact could do for the doomed. Her ship entered the Sol system and was immediately surrounded by human vessels. This surprised her. The ships were not what she expected. They were large, heavily armed, and moved with a precision that spoke of long practice. Their designs were unlike anything in her database. A voice came through her communication system. It was calm and professional. Mindari vessel, you have entered Terran space. State your purpose. I am Ambassador Thessan of the Galactic Compact. I come with urgent news for your leaders. The Valkyrie Dominion threatens your species with extinction. There was a pause. Then, proceed to Earth. You will be escorted. The journey to the human homeworld took 6 hours. Thessan spent the time observing everything she could. What she saw disturbed her. The asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets was not empty. It was filled with structures. Massive structures, shipyards, weapons platforms, and facilities she could not identify. The moons of the giant planets were the same. Industry on a scale she had never seen. What had the humans been doing for 200 years? She landed on Earth in a city called Geneva. The humans who greeted her were polite but reserved. They wore simple uniforms in dark colors. Their faces showed nothing. They led her to a building of glass and steel and into a room where a single man waited. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen was old by human standards. His hair was gray and his face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He sat behind a simple desk and gestured for Thessan to sit across from him. Ambassador, he said, welcome to Earth. I understand you have information about the Valkyrie. Thessan activated her holographic projector. Images of Valkyrie ships filled the air. Images of destroyed worlds. Images of the dead. The Valkyrie have conquered or destroyed every major civilization in this galaxy, she said. Their technology is beyond anything we understand. Their numbers are endless. They feel no mercy and accept no surrender. In 18 months, perhaps less, they will come for your species. She showed him everything. The fall of the Thessan Empire. The scattering of her own people. The silence where the Crucible Network once existed. 3,000 years of death and despair. Admiral Chen watched without expression. He asked occasional questions. His voice never changed. When Thessan finished, she made her offer. The Galactic Compact maintains hidden refuge worlds. We can evacuate perhaps 200 million of your people. It is not much, but it will preserve your species. Some part of humanity will survive. She expected shock. She expected grief. She expected desperate questions about how to fight or where to hide. Admiral Chen simply nodded. Thank you for the warning, Ambassador. And thank you for the offer of evacuation. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city beyond. But we will have to decline. Thesson felt her heart stop. Admiral, you do not understand. The Valkyrie cannot be defeated. Every species that has tried has been destroyed. Your only hope is to run and hide. Chen turned back to her. For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was anticipation. Ambassador Thesson, he said quietly, we have been watching the stars for a very long time. We saw what was out there. We saw the Valkyrie coming. Not this year, not this decade, but eventually. We knew first contact would not be friendly. He pressed a button on his desk. The windows darkened, and holographic displays filled the room. Ships, weapons, technology that made Thesson's mind hurt to look at. For 200 years, we have prepared. We did not explore the galaxy because we were building something else, something for this exact moment. He looked at her with those calm, sharp eyes. We have been waiting for something like this. Thesson stared at the displays around her. Her mind could not process what she was seeing. The scale, the power, the sheer impossibility of it. What are you? She whispered. Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a comforting smile. We are humanity, Ambassador, and we would like to introduce ourselves to the galaxy properly. Ambassador Thesson had seen many wonders in her long life. She had walked the crystal towers of the Thesson homeworld before they fell. She had communed with the great minds of the Crucible Network before they went silent. She had witnessed technologies that bent the laws of physics like soft metal. None of it prepared her for what the humans showed her. Admiral Chen led her to a shuttle on the roof of the building. It was a small craft, sleek and dark, with no visible engines or weapons. When she stepped inside, she felt nothing. No vibration, no sense of movement, but when she looked out the window, Earth was already shrinking behind them. How fast are we moving? She asked. About 12% of light speed, Chen replied casually. We will reach the fleet in approximately 4 hours. Thesson did the mathematics in her head. That was impossible. No ship this small could accelerate that quickly without killing everyone inside. The inertial forces alone should have crushed them to paste. Your inertial dampeners are remarkable, she said carefully. Chen shook his head. We do not use inertial dampeners. We move the space around the ship instead of moving the ship through space. There is no acceleration from our perspective. Thesson felt cold. That kind of technology was theoretical at best. The Thesson Empire had spent 1,000 years trying to develop it and failed. The humans had apparently succeeded in 2 centuries. What else had they done? The shuttle passed the orbit of Mars and continued outward. Thesson watched the asteroid belt approach on the displays. From a distance, it looked normal. Rocks and dust and empty space. But as they got closer, the truth became clear. The asteroids were gone. In their place was a ring of construction that circled the entire sun. Shipyards stretched for thousands of kilometers. Factory complexes processed raw materials on a scale that defied imagination. And everywhere, there were ships. Thousands of ships. Tens of thousands of ships. Warships of every size. From small attack craft to massive vessels that dwarfed anything Thesson had ever seen. This is the Terran Combined Fleet, Admiral Chen said. Or rather, this is one part of it. There are similar facilities around Jupiter, Saturn, and in other locations I cannot disclose. Thesson could not speak. She could only stare. The shuttle docked with the largest ship in the formation. The HSS Prometheus, Chen called it. The flagship of the human fleet. It was 5 kilometers long, shaped like a elongated diamond, and it hurt to look at. Not because it was ugly, but because her eyes could not quite focus on it. The ship seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. What is wrong with my vision? She asked as they walked through the corridors. Nothing is wrong, Chen assured her. The Prometheus exists partially in folded space. Your mind is trying to see all of it at once. The sensation will pass. They entered the bridge. It was not what Thesson expected. There were no screens, no control panels, no crew sitting at stations. Instead, There was an empty room with a single chair in the center. Admiral Chen sat in the chair and closed his eyes. Suddenly, the room came alive. Holographic displays appeared everywhere. Data streamed through the air in patterns too fast for Thesson to follow. And she realized that Chen was not just sitting in the chair, he was connected to it. Thin lines of light ran from his temples to the headrest. Neural interface, Chen explained, his eyes still closed. Every crew member on this ship is connected to its systems directly. We think commands rather than speak them. Our reaction time is measured in nanoseconds. He opened his eyes and looked at her. Would you like to see what we can do? Thesson nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Chen thought a command. The displays changed, showing a region of empty space near the edge of the solar system. Then, without warning, the Prometheus was there. No sense of movement, no transition. They were simply in a different place, instantly. Dimensional shift, Chen said. We can move anywhere within range without crossing the space between. Our enemies cannot track us because we are never actually traveling. He thought another command. A weapon fired from the ship. Thesson could not see what kind of weapon it was, but she saw the result. A small asteroid, perhaps a kilometer across, simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not shattered. It was there, and then it was not. Quantum dissolution, Chen explained. We can erase the bonds that hold matter together. It works on anything, ships, stations, planets, if necessary. Thesson felt sick. How is this possible? Your species is only 200 years old in space. How could you develop such technology? Chen stood from the chair and walked to stand beside her. His face was serious. When we first looked at the stars, we dreamed of peaceful exploration. We imagined meeting other species and sharing knowledge. We hoped the universe would be kind. He paused. Then we detected the Velkari. We saw what they did to the civilizations in their path. We realized the universe was not kind. It was hungry. He gestured at the displays around them. So we changed our dreams. We stopped preparing for peace and started preparing for war. Every resource, every mind, every breakthrough we made went into one goal: survival. But the technology, Thesson protested. Even with total focus, this should be impossible. Chen smiled slightly. We had help. About 150 years ago, we found something buried on Mars. An ancient database from a civilization that existed before the Velkari, before most current species. It was damaged, incomplete, but it gave us starting points, theories to test, directions to explore. He looked at her directly. We did not steal our technology, Ambassador. We built it, but we built it faster than we could have alone. Thesson thought about this. An ancient civilization, destroyed long ago, leaving seeds of knowledge for those who came after. It was almost poetic. The Velkari advance fleet will arrive in approximately 6 weeks, Chen said. 800 warships. They will expect easy prey. They will find us waiting. He gestured, and the displays showed the full Terran combined fleet. 4,000 warships arranged in perfect formation. This is not our full strength, Chen admitted. We are holding reserves in case of unexpected developments. But this force should be sufficient for the initial engagement. Thesson stared at the fleet. She thought about the Velkari ships she had seen, the crystalline dreadnoughts that had broken empires, the weapons that cracked planets. You believe you can win, she said softly. Admiral Chen turned to face her. His expression was calm, confident, and absolutely certain. Ambassador, I do not believe we can win. I know we will win. The only question is how long it takes and how much of the enemy we need to destroy before the rest. Understand that the galaxy has changed. He sat back in the command chair and connected to the ship once more. You are welcome to stay and observe. In 6 weeks, you will see something that has not happened in 3,000 years. What is that? Thesson asked. Chen smiled that unsettling smile again. You will see the Velkari lose. The Velkari advance fleet entered the Sol system like a swarm of hungry insects. 800 crystalline warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space. They spread out in perfect formation, their faceted hulls catching the light of the distant sun and scattering it like diamonds. Archon Zirveth stood on the command platform of his flagship, the Eternal Hunger. He was ancient by any standard, having lived for over 4,000 years. He had personally overseen the destruction of 7 civilizations. He had watched worlds burn and species beg for mercy that never came. This would be another conquest. Another feast for the Dominion. The humans were young and weak, barely worth noticing. His scouts had reported primitive ships and limited defenses. This would be over in days. Supreme Commander, one of his subordinates reported, "We have detected enemy vessels. Approximately 4,000 ships in formation near the fourth planet." Zirveth made a sound of contempt. 4,000 ships against 800 Valkyrie warships was not enough. It was never enough. The mathematics of war had always favored the Dominion. "Advance," he commanded. Standard conquest pattern. Destroy their fleet, then proceed to their homeworld. The Valkyrie fleet moved inward. Zirveth watched the human vessels on his displays. They were not retreating. They were not spreading out to avoid destruction. They simply waited in perfect formation, as if they wanted to be destroyed all at once. Foolish. Every species made the same mistake the first time. They thought numbers and courage could overcome the Valkyrie. They thought they could win because they wanted to live. They never understood that wanting was not enough. "Weapons range in 3 minutes," his subordinate announced. Zirveth prepared his attack orders. He would destroy the human fleet in a single, overwhelming strike. He would leave no survivors, no witnesses. The displays flickered. When they stabilized, half of the human fleet had vanished. "Report," Zirveth demanded. "Unknown, Supreme Commander. The enemy vessels simply disappeared. Our sensors cannot locate them." Before Zirveth could respond, the displays flickered again. Now the human ships were everywhere. They had spread throughout his formation, appearing in the spaces between his vessels. They were above him, below him, surrounding him on all sides, and they were impossibly close. Ambassador Thesson watched from the bridge of the Prometheus. Her hearts were pounding so hard she thought they might burst. She had never seen anything like this. The human fleet had not moved in any conventional sense. They had simply existed in one location and then existed in another. No travel time, no warning. One moment they were a distant formation. The next they were inside the Valkyrie fleet itself. Admiral Chen sat in his command chair. His eyes closed. His mind connected to every ship in the fleet. His face showed no emotion. His voice was calm. "All vessels report ready," he said softly. "Execute Protocol Omega." The battle lasted 93 seconds. Thesson watched the Valkyrie ships die. They did not explode. They did not break apart. They simply ceased to exist, one after another, like candles being blown out by an invisible wind. The crystalline hulls that had shrugged off the weapons of 17 civilizations offered no resistance at all. The human weapons were beyond anything in her experience. She saw dimensional rifts tear ships apart from the inside, collapsing them into spaces too small to exist. She saw gravity weapons crush vessels into tiny points of compressed matter. She saw beams of pure entropy that aged ships into dust in microseconds. The Valkyrie tried to fight back. Their weapons fired desperately in all directions, but there was nothing to hit. The human ships flickered and shifted, existing in multiple places at once, never staying still long enough to target. Valkyrie weapons passed through empty space where enemies had been moments before. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Archon Zirveth watched his fleet die and felt something he had not experienced in 4,000 years. Fear. His flagship shook as nearby vessels were destroyed. The Eternal Hunger was one of the most powerful warships in the Dominion, equipped with weapons that had cracked planets. It should have been invincible. A human ship appeared directly in front of him. It was smaller than his vessel, perhaps a quarter of the size. It should have been insignificant. A beam of light reached out from the human ship. Zirveth did not see what happened next, because the beam erased him from existence before his brain could process the image. The Eternal Hunger followed a microsecond later, its crystalline structure dissolving into nothing. 93 seconds after the battle began, it was over. 800 Valkyrie warships had become debris and dust. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. They had not even taken significant damage. Thesson realized she was crying. She did not know when she had started. The tears flowed down her face and she made no effort to stop them. 3,000 years of terror had ended in less than 2 minutes. Admiral Chen opened his eyes and disconnected from the ship. He looked tired, she realized. Not physically exhausted, but weary in some deeper way. "All targets neutralized," he reported. "Fleet status, 100% operational. No casualties." He turned to look at Thesson. His expression was not triumphant. It was sad. "You are witnessing the end of the Velkari Dominion," he said quietly. "They do not know it yet, but their empire died today. What we did here, we can do again. And again. As many times as necessary." Thesson wiped her eyes. "They will send more ships, their full fleet, everything they have." Chen nodded. "We are counting on it. We need them to commit everything to attacking us. When they do, we will destroy them completely. One battle, one moment, and then it will be over." "How can you be so certain?" Chen stood from his chair and walked to stand beside her. Together, they looked at the debris field that had been the Velkari advance fleet. "Because we have been preparing for this for 200 years, he said. "Every ship, every weapon, every strategy, all of it designed for one purpose: to end threats to our species permanently. We did not build a military, Ambassador. We built a solution." He turned to face her directly. "The Velkari have never faced a species like us. They have conquered civilizations that fought to survive. We are different. We did not prepare to survive. We prepared to win. And we will win. Because we refuse to accept any other outcome." Thesson looked at this strange, terrifying species that had emerged from obscurity to reshape the galaxy. She thought about the civilizations that had fallen to the Velkari, the trillions who had died, the cultures that had been lost forever. "Why did you wait?" she asked. "You could have saved so many. Why did you stay hidden?" Chen was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. "We were not sure we could control what we had become. Power like this is dangerous. We needed to be certain we would use it correctly." He paused. "We are still not certain, but the time for waiting is over." He returned to his command chair. "The Velkari will come with everything they have, and when they do, we will be waiting." Thesson nodded slowly. She understood now. Humanity had not been hiding from the galaxy. They had been preparing to change it forever, and in 93 seconds, they had proven they could. The message reached the Velkari homeworld like a disease spreading through a body. 800 warships destroyed. The advance fleet annihilated. Archon Zervith, the greatest military commander in Dominion history, erased from existence, and it had taken less than 2 minutes. The Dominion Council gathered in the crystalline halls of the Eternal Palace. These were the oldest and most powerful of the Velkari, beings who had lived for tens of thousands of years. They had never known defeat. They had never experienced fear. Now they felt both. "This is impossible," the High Archon declared. His voice echoed through the chamber. "No species could destroy our fleet so quickly. There must be an error in the reports." "There is no error," another council member replied. The displays showed the recorded transmissions from the battle, captured by long-range sensors before the ships were destroyed. "The humans possess weapons beyond our understanding. Our ships could not target them. Our defenses could not stop them." The council watched the recording in silence. They saw their warships vanish like smoke in the wind. They saw the crystalline hulls that had conquered galaxies dissolve into nothing. They saw 4,000 years of military supremacy end in 93 seconds. "What do we do?" someone asked. The voice was small and uncertain. It was a voice that had never been heard in this chamber before. The High Archon stood. He was the oldest of them all, the one who remembered the beginning of the Dominion's expansion. He had watched 17 civilizations fall. He had drunk the life force of countless worlds. He would not watch his own species fall to primitives. "We do what we have always done," he said. "We destroy them. We gather every ship in the Dominion, every warrior, every weapon. We descend upon their world with such overwhelming force that nothing can survive." They defeated 800 ships. "Let them try to defeat 40,000. The council murmured in agreement. Yes, this was the answer. The humans had surprised them. Nothing more. With the full might of the Dominion, they would be crushed like every other species before them. Orders went out across the Empire. Ships abandoned their conquest of distant worlds. Fleets that had been scattered across the galaxy began the journey to the mustering point. The Velkari were gathering for war. 3 weeks later, the largest armada in the history of the galaxy assembled near the human solar system. 40,000 crystalline warships stretched across the void like a wall of death. The light of distant stars reflected off their hulls, creating a curtain of brilliant, terrible beauty. The High Archon himself commanded the fleet from the Great Devourer, the largest warship ever built. It was 20 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and drain stars. It had never been defeated. It had never even been damaged. Today, it would lead the Valkyrie to final victory. "The human fleet has been detected," a subordinate reported. "Same position as before. Same number of ships, 4,000. The High Archon felt contempt rise in his ancient heart. The humans had not even tried to gather more forces. They thought their tricks would work again. They thought 40,000 ships could be destroyed as easily as 800. They were wrong. "All ships advance," he commanded. "Show no mercy. Leave nothing alive." The Valkyrie armada moved forward like a tidal wave of crystal and light. 40,000 ships against 4,000, 10-to-1 odds. It should have been enough to guarantee victory. It was not. Ambassador Thessin stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and watched the Valkyrie fleet approach. Her hands were shaking. The displays showed more enemy ships than she had ever seen in one place. The combined firepower of that armada could destroy solar systems. "They brought everything," she whispered. "Their entire fleet." Admiral Chen sat in his command chair, connected to the ship and the fleet beyond. His eyes were closed, but his voice was calm. "Good. This will be cleaner." "Cleaner? There are 40,000 ships out there." Chen opened his eyes and looked at her. There was no fear in his gaze. There was no uncertainty. There was only the absolute confidence of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. "Ambassador, we designed our fleet to fight exactly this battle. Every weapon, every ship, every strategy was built for this moment. The Valkyrie think numbers matter. They are about to learn otherwise." He closed his eyes again and sent his commands across the fleet. "All vessels, execute protocol, Omega Prime. Full deployment." The human fleet did not wait for the Valkyrie to reach them. They flickered out of existence and reappeared throughout the enemy formation, just as they had before. But this time, something was different. This time, each human ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once. The displays showed 4,000 human vessels, occupying 40,000 positions simultaneously. The Valkyrie targeting systems went insane. They could not track enemies that existed in quantum superposition. They could not aim at targets that were everywhere and nowhere at once. And then the humans fired. Thessin watched the battle unfold and realized she was witnessing something that would never happen again. The Valkyrie fleet was not being defeated. It was being erased. Ships vanished by the 100, then by the 1,000. The crystalline hulls that had terrified the galaxy for millennia were dissolved, crushed, torn apart by forces that should not exist. The Great Devourer tried to retreat. The High Archon, for the first time in his endless life, ordered a withdrawal. But there was nowhere to go. Human ships surrounded him on all sides, flickering in and out of reality, their weapons reaching across dimensions to find him wherever he fled. A beam of light touched the Great Devourer. The most powerful warship ever built was transported directly into the heart of the nearest star. It ceased to exist before the High Archon could even understand what was happening. 4 minutes and 17 seconds after the battle began, it was over. 40,000 Valkyrie warships had been reduced to nothing. Not debris, not wreckage, nothing. The quantum dissolution weapons left no trace of what they destroyed. The human fleet floated in empty space where the greatest armada in history had been moments before. 7 ships had taken damage. None had been destroyed. Human casualties, numbered in the dozens. Chen disconnected from the ship and stood. He looked exhausted, but there was a weight lifted from his shoulders, a burden he had carried for 200 years. "It is done," he said quietly. "The Valkyrie military no longer exists." Thessin stared at the empty space on the displays. 40,000 ships, gone in 4 minutes. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 3,000 years had been broken in a single afternoon. "What happens now?" she asked. Chen walked to stand beside her. He looked out at the stars, at the empty space where an empire had died. "Now we finish it. The Valkyrie homeworld, their colonies, their infrastructure. We will give them one chance to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we will remove them from the galaxy entirely." His voice was not cruel. It was not triumphant. It was simply stating a fact, like describing the weather or the time of day. "And if they surrender?" Thessin asked. "Then they will live. As a small species on a few restricted worlds, they will never threaten anyone again." He paused. "We are not monsters, Ambassador. We do not enjoy killing. But we will not allow a threat to our species to survive. That is not negotiable. Tessin nodded slowly. She understood. Humanity had not become the most powerful force in the galaxy by being merciful to their enemies. They had done it by being absolutely, terrifyingly efficient. The Galactic Compact will want to know, she said. The surviving species. They have been hiding for so long. They need to know it is safe. Chen smiled. It was a gentle smile, tired but genuine. Send them a message, Ambassador. Tell them the Velkari Dominion no longer exists. Tell them they can come home. He looked out at the stars one last time. Tell them humanity stands watch. The message traveled across the galaxy at the speed of light, and faster. It reached hidden worlds and secret refuges. It found survivors huddled in the darkness, waiting for death that never came. It carried news that no one had dared to hope for. The Velkari Dominion no longer exists. You may return home. Ambassador Tessin sent the message herself, broadcasting on every frequency the Galactic Compact used. She added her own words, her own witness to what she had seen. She told them about the human fleet, about the battles that lasted minutes, about the absolute destruction of an empire that had ruled through terror for 3,000 years. She told them the galaxy was free. The responses came slowly at first, then faster. The scattered Mindari reached out with their telepathic voices, crying with joy across the void. The Tessin survivors emerged from their hiding places, unable to believe what they were hearing. Species that had given up all hope began to dream again. Tessin stood on a balcony in Geneva, watching the human city below. It was a beautiful place, she had learned. Humans built beautiful things when they were not building weapons. They created art and music and stories. They laughed and loved and dreamed of peaceful futures. It was hard to connect these gentle beings with the force that had erased the Velkari from existence. Admiral Chen found her there. He had changed out of his uniform and wore simple civilian clothes. He looked smaller somehow, less like a weapon and more like a tired old man. The Velkari have surrendered, he said, joining her at the balcony. Unconditional terms. They will be confined to their homeworld and 3 agricultural colonies. Their military is dissolved permanently. They will be monitored to ensure compliance. You let them live, Tessin said. It was not a question. They surrendered. We do not kill those who surrender. Chen looked out at the city. We are not the Velkari. We do not destroy for the pleasure of destruction. We protect our own. And now we will protect others. That is enough. Tessin turned to face him. The question had been burning in her mind since the first battle. Now she finally asked it. You could have saved so many. The 17 civilizations that fell. The trillions who died. If you had acted earlier, they might still exist. Why did you wait? Chen was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something old and painful. We were afraid of ourselves. Tessin did not understand. Afraid? You are the most powerful force in the galaxy. What could you possibly fear? That is exactly what we feared. Chen sat down on a bench, suddenly looking every one of his years. 200 years ago, we realized we could build weapons beyond imagination. We could make ourselves the masters of everything. And we looked at human history, at all the terrible things we had done to each other, and we wondered, what would we become with that kind of power? He looked at his hands. We built the fleet. We prepared for war, but we also built safeguards. We trained our people not just to fight, but to know when to stop fighting. We created laws and limits. We tried to become worthy of the power we were creating. And are you worthy? Tessin asked quietly. Chen smiled sadly. I do not know. I hope so. I pray so. But I cannot be certain. No one can be certain of something like that. He looked up at her. All I know is that we chose to use our power to save others instead of conquer them. We chose to end the Velkari threat forever instead of becoming the new threat. Whether that makes us worthy, that is for history to judge. Tessin thought about this. She thought about the empires that had risen and fallen throughout galactic history. She thought about the Velkari, who had used their power to consume everything in their path, and she thought about the humans, who had built the greatest military force in existence and used it to set the galaxy free. What will you do now? She asked. Chen stood and walked back to the balcony. The sun was setting over Geneva, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. We will go home, he said. The fleet will return to its hidden ports. Our soldiers will become civilians again. We will build and create and live the peaceful lives we always wanted. And if another threat emerges, then we will be ready. Chen's voice was firm. We will always be ready. But we will not seek out enemies. We will not conquer or dominate. We will simply exist, watching the stars, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. He turned to face her one last time. The Galactic Compact is welcome to rebuild. The surviving species can reclaim their homeworlds. We will help if they want our help. We will leave them alone if they prefer. The choice is theirs. That is remarkably generous for a species that could rule everything. Chen shook his head. Power is not about ruling, Ambassador. It is about protecting. We have the power to protect the entire galaxy. That is what we will do. Nothing more, nothing less. 6 months later, Thesson returned to her people. The Mindari were rebuilding on their ancestral worlds, their telepathic songs filling the void once more. The Thesson survivors were emerging from their refuges, planting flags on planets they had abandoned millennia ago. Everywhere she looked, the galaxy was coming back to life. But there was one difference from the old days. One change that no one could ignore. Humanity was watching, not conquering, not demanding tribute, not threatening violence, just watching. Their ships patrolled the borders of civilized space, silent guardians against any future threat. Their diplomats offered friendship and trade to anyone who wanted it. Their scientists shared knowledge freely with any species that asked. They had become protectors of a galaxy they could have easily owned. Thesson often thought about her conversations with Admiral Chen. She thought about the fear he had described, the worry that humanity might become as terrible as the enemies they had destroyed. She thought about the choice they had made, to use their impossible power for protection instead of conquest. And she thought about the question that haunted every ambassador, every leader, every being in the galaxy. What would happen if humanity ever changed their minds? The answer, she finally realized, was that it did not matter. Humanity could have enslaved them all. They could have demanded worship and tribute. They could have become the new Valkyrie. Only worse, they had chosen not to. That choice, made freely by beings with the power to destroy everything, was worth more than any guarantee. It was proof that strength did not have to mean cruelty, that power did not have to corrupt, that even in a universe of darkness and terror, some species could choose to be kind. On a small planet circling an ordinary yellow star, Admiral Marcus Chen retired to a house overlooking an ocean. He spent his days reading books and growing vegetables in a small garden. He never spoke of the battles he had won or the empire he had destroyed, but every night he looked up at the stars. And somewhere out there, the greatest battle fleet in history waited in silence, ready to defend a galaxy that had finally learned what humanity truly was. Not conquerors, not destroyers, not tyrants, guardians. And for the first time in 3,000 years, children across the galaxy grew up without fear. They looked at the stars and saw not hunger and death, but wonder and possibility. They knew that somewhere out there, humanity was watching over them. The darkness between the stars was no longer empty. It was full of hope, and that was humanity's greatest victory of all.